Despite Georgia being favored by 6.5 points against the Ole Miss Rebels, if Trinidad Chambliss and that defense make just some slight adjustments, Ole Miss is going to win this football game.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
This crossover of Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On the Portal. Thank you very much for making Locked On Ole Miss and the Portal part of your day each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 podcasting network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, if you want to get in on all the live action with the NFL, just place your live NFL bets all season long with FanDuel. We're going to be talking about the playoff overall. Who would Ole Miss play? What's going on around them? Later on in the show, we're going to talk about some portal needs. And we're definitely going to dig into the offense and the defense for the Rebels versus Georgia. But first question here is, which one is the defensive player that's going to step up the most? And secondarily, how does Trinidad Chambliss take it just a little bit farther than what he did the first time against Georgia? Let's start with that, Stephen. I've been ultra impressed with Chambliss. He's one of the greatest stories in the history of college football, in my opinion. I don't know what your thought is. But the dude was at freaking Ferris State right now at this time last year. Okay, Ferris State. That is not normal to end up in the SEC and be as good as any player in the league. It's not. I've never heard of anything like that. So what is your take on what he's done, and what does Ferris State's former player, quarterback Trinidad Chambliss, need to do to help Ole Miss beat the Dogs?
Well, first of all, if he was campaigned for at all, if the whole world's attention wasn't on the head coach and where he was going to coach, he would have been in New York, and he belonged to be in New York. I thought he should have been too. He should have been too. I really do. I don't know if he would have won, but he should have been there at that point, because he is the best or second best quarterback in the entire SEC right now. And the first time Ole Miss played Georgia, if you remember how that game went, he got off to a really good start, took the crowd out of it. Ole Miss had a 4th and 2 against them, to where if they make the tackle, they're probably going to go up by 16 points in the fourth quarter, and that game's going to be over. They miss the tackle, they get the first down, that crowd gets juiced. And the young player from Ferris State, for the first time playing in front of 90,000 juiced fans, kind of felt in the fourth quarter what that was. He missed some easy passes. If anybody wants to go back and look at that, he just got to him. It just happened. Well, that's not going to happen in the Sugar Bowl. So that's the one way you can improve his performance over the last time. The second thing is the Trinidad Chambliss right now is a better quarterback than the one that was playing against the Georgia Bulldogs the first time. And that's impressive, because the first time they went together, he had a heck of a day, and everybody's like, he's a finished product. He's going to be a Heisman candidate. All of that stuff. Well, he's actually better. They're doing a better job of reading coverages. And in the early part of his ascension to Ole Miss, they were running a lot of the same stuff that Austin Simmons would have had in the offense. Slowly, they started putting some Ferris State principles and taking advantage of Trinidad Chambliss. So you mix those together. He does a very good job of not turning over the ball. He is excellent against the pass rush, of buying time. He makes the offensive line better. I think just a little bit, that fourth quarter, not having to deal with a juiced up crowd and all of that, he is going to be a much better player this time around.
If he can just do some of the things that have nothing to do with passing or rushing yards, just dissecting what the Dogs are doing, and that defense is playing really, really well, just so he can get them into the right running play. Make sure the protection is correct, and if it's not, in a timely fashion, change the protection. Those are really important ingredients. Georgia in particular has changed their looks. They were anemic early in the year at pass rush, kind of like Ole Miss was, and they both have started blitzing more. And they do it out of some zone fire stuff. They do some different guys dropping. It's not easy to figure out what they're doing, because some of what it is after the snap. But you have to make all the pre-snap reads that you can. And then if they have the right defense called, don't create the oh no play. It's okay to throw it away, but don't throw it to a guy in red. Like, yeah, that's the only thing I'm concerned about, is them really fooling him and they get a freebie. Is Georgia's offense it's okay, and they can make some explosive because they got so many good athletes. Like Branch, obviously, great player. But overall, that offense they need help. Don't give them field position. Do not allow them to have momentum because of turnovers. I think that you're right, though. He's done a better job with coverages. And if you look at some of the numbers, Stephen, like just look at Trinidad and what he's done here recently, it's pretty impressive. Like the last 4 games, Citadel, Florida, Mississippi State, and Tulane, 87%, 74%, 67%, 79%. And I know Citadel and Tulane aren't great. Mississippi State's not great, but they're still Division I teams in their own way with like Florida and Mississippi State. That's SEC. And then if you even go back, Oklahoma and South Carolina, he didn't hit as many in terms of percentage, but he threw for 315 yards at Oklahoma. That defense is going to get after you. That's pretty impressive. And he didn't throw a pick. I think that the back half of the season, he played as well as any signal caller in the country, Diego Pavia or anybody else you want to throw out. There's several good players. But what are your thoughts about him from like right after that Georgia game until he got done with like the Oklahoma game? Like I saw growth there. And then, of course, we already talked about back into the season. He killed it.
Yeah, he's just been able to pick out receivers. And the one thing that I've said about Trinidad Chambliss, he does a good job of being a true point guard. Under Jackson Dart, as good of a player as Jackson Dart was, he had a tendency to focus in too much on Trey Harris or focus in too much on Jordan Watkins. Trinidad Chambliss doesn't do that. You might have like a receiver with 3 catches, another receiver with 2 catches, another receiver with 3 catches. He spreads it around. The old Mike Leach balance thing is just the number of touches on the offense for each player as opposed to a pass run mix. And Trinidad Chambliss was really good at doing that. Now, one thing that I think is interesting and they should consider doing in this Georgia game is the same thing they did against Oklahoma. And that is get to the line, make the defense get their call in, and then wait until after 15 seconds to snap the ball so it can't be audibled all the way in with there's coaches, if you remember, in a middle linebacker's ear of what's going on. That help of Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart and those guys who they have really good coaches, it's going to force them to, hey, the players are going to have to make the read in that situation. They're going to have to make the call because if not, you're risking a bust. And I think that varying the tempo in this game is going to be massive because Ole Miss is good enough talent-wise to cause problems for any team in the league, any team left in the playoff. And it doesn't matter if you go fast. It doesn't matter if you go slow. Ole Miss does not need a gimmick. What they need to do against Georgia is just vary the tempo so that the coaches don't have a grasp on exactly the timing of when it's going to go. Oh, they're always going to snap the ball at 25 seconds. No, sometimes you snap it at 12, sometimes 25 to where they can't be confident enough to do that to where they just get into that middle linebacker's ear and say, hey, cover three, whatever their quick buzzword call is. They're not going to be able to do that.
I think that's a great piece of information. I mean, Georgia's defensive staff is tremendous, and they've got guys. I'm still shocked that nobody's hired Schumann. He must be waiting for an elite job only, or he'd be gone.
He's on the Kirby track because Kirby went from defensive coordinator at Alabama to the head coach at Georgia. So he's waiting on one of the big boys to open up.
Well, I mean, he didn't get the Florida job, so I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't think he was on the list for LSU, but he may be at Georgia a long time because a lot of these teams don't want to give anybody that's not got head coaching experience any love. So, but with that in mind, I'm curious what you think about the defense in the same sense. We're confident that Trinidad's going to play well. He needs to do it just a little bit here, a little bit there to maybe beat Georgia. But the defensive side, Stephen and I were not as sure exactly who it's going to be. We've got some ideas. But which defensive player for the Rebels will stand up and make that play? That is next here on this crossover, Locked On the Portal and Locked On Ole Miss. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting it's at its best unless you're in the middle of it with all the shifting and all the different things that go on. A receiver gets hot, there's a pick six, a quarterback gets hot, maybe a team makes a great fourth down stop. Whatever it is, FanDuel lets you jump into the moment right when it happens. Live spreads and money lines will adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. And you can bet on the next touchdown pass, the next running back that scores, whatever it is you want to do with FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, Stephen, thank you very much for joining in today, buddy. I appreciate it. And today's show is also going to be a part of the Everydayer Club. If you have not already, I'm sure Stephen has told you about this before, Locked On Ole Miss. Down in the description, there's a link. Just make sure you click it. You can take your audio wherever you want and get it ad-free. There's a Discord. There's all kinds of opportunities to check out. It is described down below. That is the Everydayer Club. Stephen, defensively, this is a really unique situation. Echols is playing much better. They've changed the defense. I always trust Suntarian Perkins, but he's going to make some kind of play. That's low-hanging fruit. I'm not even going to focus on him. They're going to try to stay away from him, obviously. But there's 2 or 3 other guys. Like Cam Franklin needs to make a play. There's guys in the secondary. You know the roster front to back. Outside, like Echols, and you and I have been on Echols since he was in high school. We talked about that a lot when he was coming up. But now who in the back 7? Is it another defensive lineman? Who needs to be that guy that creates some havoc and gives Ole Miss a little bit more of an advantage than what they had the first time they played the Georgia Bulldogs?
Couple of names that I'm thinking about immediately comes to mind is, first of all, is Andrew Jones, a linebacker, the transfer out of Grambling, who came to Ole Miss. The Ole Miss Georgia game, he didn't hardly play until like the last 3 minutes of the game. And all of a sudden he went onto the field and just wreaked havoc. What happened? And he's been on the field ever since. He's the similar type player to what Chris Pupal was. He's a really athletic linebacker, can go sideline to sideline, really likes contact. I expect him to make an impact against Georgia in this game. And also against Tulane, Jaylen Braxton played cornerback. He played well. He had an interception. It was very well taken. He is somebody that you compare with Antonio Kite and not worry so much potentially about those outside wide receivers and concentrate on the middle of the field, which is where the Georgia Bulldogs like to get lost and lucky in those tight ends in the middle of the field to where they can really hurt you. But I like those two. Andrew Jones and Jaylen Braxton are 2 names to remember for the Ole Miss defense.
Anything in particular that UGA has been doing? I mean, their offense has played better. Branch, obviously a talented slot. Their running backs, they're both quality players. I really don't know. Like, it's hard to say with Kirby. They got so many guys. Which one's going to be the guy this week? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Nate Frazier, Chauncey Bowens, Gunnar Stockton's got 8 rushing touchdowns. He leads the team. If you'd have told me that before the season, I said, you're crazy. I knew he could run a little bit, but he's got 442 yards. Bowens got 516 and 861 for Frazier. Anything there? Like, is there anybody that you're really trying to focus on, or is it just play your defense? How would you attack UGA if you were the Ole Miss Rebels?
I would tackle on the perimeter. I would try to be extremely physical and play very well in space, because the way that Georgia will beat you and like truly beat you down is through Zachariah Branch on the outside. They're going to hit you in about 7 different screen variations over the course of a game to Zach Branch. And all it takes is one mistake, one missed tackle, and he's gone. I mean, he's a truly, truly special guy. I think that's your number one. The second thing that you need to take away is Nate Frazier or Chauncey Bowens, whoever's back in the backfield. I mean, they might run a little bit differently, but it looks like the same guy. It looks like a Georgia running back back there. You need to be able to do that, because Mike Bobo, his offenses, when they can run the ball and when they can't run the ball, 2 completely different animals. I think if you start with those 2 things, you will be all right, because it's like Pete Golding says, the nightmare when you're playing Georgia is you go from 2nd and 6 to 3rd and 2 to 1st and 10, and they can just slowly go down the field on you. You have to get them in 3rd and long, and you have to get off the field on 3rd and long to beat the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, if you keep them in a situation where it's 3rd and 5 a lot, I'm not sure I'm a big Gunnar Stockton guy. Like, he'll go get you the 5 yards sometimes, but like, let's go back to the Alabama game for a second. Mm-hmm. Alabama's offense the last time they played each other was abysmal. Kirby saw it early. They couldn't do nothing against their front. Gunner threw a pick or did something stupid, or I can't remember what it was, and that was all she wrote. Kirby wasn't having it. The ball did not go to the middle of the field beyond about 3 yards the rest of the game. It was outside, it was screens, and it was runs, punt the ball. He turned into Nick Saban 2009. He does not trust Gunner. And that was SEC title game, so this is recent. I'm curious to see what's going to happen if Ole Miss could somehow get a turnover or any kind of big play defensively where Gunner doesn't make the right protection call. And like Ole Miss, we've talked about this today. They've changed their defense. They're not just dropping 8 anymore. They're coming after guys. I mean, occasionally, but mostly they're trying to bring different guys from multiple levels. I wouldn't be surprised to see some man blitz and fire zone, all kinds of stuff. You're going to empty the clip against Georgia. Why would you not? So if he has a bad play early, and again, we've talked about Will Echols, Cam Franklin, etc. There's a million guys that could be, and watch out for Perkins. I'm sure they're going to try different ways to get him loose on stunts and blitzes. If they can get a play early, that will mitigate Georgia's run game. You've got to get a lead and make them throw more than they want. If they come back and beat you running the ball, you know what? It just is what it is. You got to make Gunner be the guy. If he does it, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, and it was mentioned in the press conference by Pete Golding that Ole Miss needs to force Georgia to have negative plays on first down. So that kind of probably tells you the mindset going into this game. They didn't blitz a lot against Tulane, but they are going to try and turn a second and 15 as opposed to a 2nd and 5 in this game because they feel that is their best chance to do it. Now, what that means also is Georgia's probably going to hit an explosive or two. They're going to pick up a blitz. They're going to do that. It's going to be one-on-one with Zach Branch, and it's going to be a problem. But it's not going to be the slow, methodical thing. I think Ole Miss can live with explosive plays more than the methodical stuff to where it's a 7-minute drive for a touchdown. Okay, you got an explosive play. Let's go back and play offense. You're playing our game whenever that's happening. And if you're doing the methodical thing, it's like, oh my goodness, we've had the ball 3 times this half, and it becomes like almost a panic situation.
Yeah, that's almost what Navy tries to do when they play teams or Army or Air Force. They just want to take the air out of the ball. Teams try to do that against Ole Miss because they don't want them playing that hurry up and all that. Georgia would be happy to see this be an 8-possession game for each team. That would strongly favor the Dogs. That means they ran the ball like crazy, and there's fewer chances for Gunner Stockton to throw it to somebody for playing for Ole Miss. So I agree with that. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the playoff overall and some portal thoughts. This is going to be one of the wildest, if this is possible, the wildest offseason in Ole Miss portal history. Considering Lane Kiffin has been your coach, that is quite the statement, but we'll get into that as well. That is next here on Locked on the Portal, crossover with Locked on Ole Miss. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like college football season, tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all, energy, the bands, and the moments that you remember forever. But actually getting the tickets, that part used to be the most frustrating with the long queues, logins, and prices jumping out at you at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to fans like you. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. If you want to open up the Game Time app, you can be in and out in 5 minutes. I know because I've done it. I bought tickets to 2 different basketball games recently and had a great time. Find the game you want just by typing it in the search box, go to that game, pick out a seat that you're interested in, click on it, and you can see the seat view right there on your phone or tablet. It is very simple. And then after that, you just put in your information and the tickets will come to you on your phone. It's pretty simple. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, Stephen, this is kind of fun here. The college football playoff, we've got Ohio State, Miami. We've got, obviously, Georgia going against Ole Miss. We got Bama and Indiana. It's just randomness. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm glad I'm not a gambler because I would have a hard time picking these games, especially with spreads. I'd be very hard-pressed to do it. Before we get into the portal stuff with Ole Miss, is there anything you're curious about in the other games? Like what's going to happen? Like anybody that you think is going to collapse, anything at all? Like I've got questions still about Bama because they can't run the ball for diddly, but anything else? And what do you want to add?
A couple of things. First of all, if Indiana could win the national championship, that would be a nightmare to whoever created the blue chip ratio. Because just look at what Indiana's roster looks like if they win the national title.
Bud Elliott, yeah, like he's admitted, like this is wild.
Yeah, because they legit have a chance to do it. And you look down there, they're like number 57 in the country as far as their talent profile. It's ridiculous. The second thing is I'm interested to see the Orange Bowl, Oregon and Texas Tech.
That should be a great game.
Yeah, and it's the two of the money teams in college football that they're just throwing out money all over the place. Should be a lot of fun, and it would be hilarious if at the end of all of this, it's Ole Miss versus Texas Tech in the national championship game, because of course it is. I mean, that would be absolutely hilarious because they played so many times in bowl games over the last 30 years. So we'll see We'll see how that goes. Sorry about that.
That's all good. Yeah, I'm curious about that Tech-Oregon game because they both have a lot of good players in the trenches. Tech has, I mean, they've got really good players. They got Lee Hunter. They got Bailey. They've got good guys up front. But I'm just going to say it. While the defensive players in the Big 12 aren't necessarily great, I'm in particular looking at their defensive lines. Like Tech just ran the ball, decent quarterback, played basic offense, and killed teams with their front because nobody has offensive lines in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. They destroyed them. Against Oregon, you're going up against real dudes in those fronts on both sides of the ball. I know Tech has players, but they haven't seen it all year. They haven't played anybody like that. So Tech's got an SEC front, in my opinion, but they just haven't played anybody. That game is very curious.
I love their linebackers too. Tech's linebackers are fantastic.
Yeah, they do a great job of coaching those guys up. The staff at Tech deserves a lot of credit. I mean, you had a guy that was in a Heisman race as a linebacker. That is bizarre. Yeah. So,
and I hate the fact that they're not allowed to throw tortillas anymore because that used to be their thing. And and all of a sudden somebody threw something besides a tortilla and tortillas get blamed for whatever that is instead of just the person being an idiot.
Yeah. Welcome to college football. Nothing makes sense. Now for the portal stuff. I've heard a million different rumors with the whole Kiffin thing. I'm sure a couple guys will go to LSU. It's inevitable. But it seems like that's a back and forth. Like, I just want you – I'm going to give you the stage. Is there anything that you think is going like – is this like – I know the fans want to kill each other, but a lot of these people know each other. They're friends. Like, fans don't want to hear that. But people on both sides, like, they're friends with each other. You think Ole Miss is trying to steal LSU players just because? Because, like, Kiffin's going to try to get like Keon Lacy and stuff. We know that. What do you think is going to happen here?
I think there's probably going to be 4 or 5 players that go to LSU, but there's also going to be 4 or 5 players that go to Ole Miss from LSU. And that's because this is the most incestuous thing I've ever seen. There 17 coaches have switched, either going to LSU or going from LSU to Ole Miss. It's just they've just shake it out and see what happens. Austin Thomas, the GM, goes to be the Ole Miss GM. Billy Glasscock, the Ole Miss GM, goes to be the LSU. And it's at all levels. It's amazing to think about what this is doing. Now, I don't know, like Keon Lacy, I think it's not going to be as simple as he's going to go to LSU because he's done so well. He probably has offers above LSU, if we're going to be honest, as far as money goes. There's going to be somebody willing to pay for Keon because he's at 1,300 yards. And if he rushes for 75 more against Georgia, Ole Miss likely has a chance to win that game. And then they're playing Ohio State, and they're like, well, okay, let's see what happens. I think Trinidad Chambliss, should he get the waiver, he stays in Oxford, Mississippi. That's just a gut feeling of what's going on. If you see the way that town has embraced Trinidad and his family, I don't see him leaving for 1 year to go participate in a rebuild, if that makes sense. I think Winnie Watkins is probably the lock to leave out of anybody.
He's tied to mine. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they're going to try to get a couple other wide receivers, maybe a Deuce Alexander. But Ole Miss, You know, Ole Miss got Matthews out of this signing class. They flipped him at the last moment. They got Caleb Cunningham. The wide receiver room is going to be fine. So if there's transfers going out in the wide receiver room, you can survive it. Running backs, a little interesting. I'm curious to see what they do. But listen, this day last year, nobody knew who Trinidad Chambliss or Keon Lacy was. He was a running back that ran for 100 yards at Missouri. So who knows what next season's going to look like. I'm curious to know, though, if Keon does go to LSU, does that mean Harlan comes back? Comes to Ole Miss?
They would have that would be 3 elite running backs on one roster, because they got the other kid too, the kid from Texas at LSU. Like, that's a lot of running backs.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I guess the transfer portals opens up. Oh, we'll see. It's the January day after. 2nd. Yeah, January 2nd. It's going to get absolutely nuts. And you mentioned this could be the craziest portal season. This has already been the craziest football season in Ole Miss history. So why wouldn't it be the craziest portal season? That's just par for the course at this point.
As a reminder, and maybe a first time knowing this, but there's only one portal window. And I know that Steven knows this. It's January 2nd through the 16th. And just for full disclaimer, you don't have to make your choice during that time, but you have to enter during that time. I think that it's going to be really interesting, especially with quarterbacks, because everybody wants to see what happens with their young guys in spring and then make a decision. Okay, we need to get a portal. There is no spring window. So you got to guess. This is old school football. There would be teams ranked. Remember back 20, 25 years, it was that team that played for, it was Bama. They won like 3 or 4 games. They were number 3 preseason. This is like 30 years ago. They won like 3 games. Their quarterback was terrible. There was no portal back then, but like if they'd have seen what they saw in spring, I have a feeling they'd have portaled. That happens. There's going to be 1 or 2 teams that are really good at this. Wayne in particular, it'll hurt LSU that he doesn't have a spring window to see what he's got at LSU. Ole Miss is probably in a little better spot there. Is there anything, though, that you think position-wise Ole Miss really has to hit this offseason regardless, or is it just wait and see?
As far as money position goes, probably edge and probably tackle, and then you would want to find out and see exactly what Trinidad, if he gets the waiver, if he stays in Oxford,
right?
Those are probably the money positions in this portal window.
Got to ask because I like the kid, Austin Simmons. If Trinidad stays, Austin's gone, right?
Yeah, that's my assumption. I haven't heard that from anybody, but yeah, if Trinidad gets his waiver, Austin's probably going to be gone. If Trinidad doesn't get the waiver and Trinidad moves on, Austin's probably going to hang around.
Well, one way or the other, they'll have a quarterback that's familiar with what they're doing. What's the situation?
Because John David Baker runs the same offense, literally exactly.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, if it's basically plug and play, you should go out of your way to make sure Austin's comfortable if Trinidad moves on.
Yeah,
he knows the verbiage. It's it's already done.
Yeah, and John David Baker, from what I've heard, is already, rekindling that relationship, because when Austin Simmons was redshirting his true freshman year, John David Baker was on the staff at Ole Miss, so they knew each other previously. They're just kind of reconnecting right now.
It will be a very interesting offseason along the Mississippi-Louisiana state lines. I will leave it at that. For Stephen Willis, Locked on Ole Miss, I'm Brian Smith. Stephen, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
We are on YouTube at Locked on Ole Miss, or wherever you get your podcasts, we're there as well. You can catch us on all of the social medias as well. We're doing shorts and all of that stuff. And if you want to be a little bit more, we have Coach Corey Burton doing film breakdowns. We have Dalen Flowers talking basketball and other sports. We have Mike Huseman talking the transfer portal and the coaching window. That is the all access plan of the Everydayers Club. That will give you access to that. So check it out.
Appreciate it. You can find the Portal Podcast all the same place you can find Locked on Ole Miss, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and more. We will see you again soon.